With these questions on number work, because they are on paper 2, there is then the need for you to use your calculator and to be able to use your calculator efficiently. Now, as you can see, there are 2 questions here. One involving powers, brackets, and division. The second one involves the use of the word reciprocal, so you need to know what that means. Now, these shouldn't be too difficult, and we need to think about how we can simplify these so that we can get the full marks for these particular questions. So in part A, it's about efficient use of the calculator, and sometimes it does mean you are better off writing things down, explain what you're doing. And then obviously in part B, it's the word reciprocal. If you don't know what the word reciprocal means, then you need to go away and learn it, because it could come up within a question. And as I've said there, reciprocal is 1 divided by the number given. And obviously as we work through this question, so it will become apparent as to how we work it out. Now in question 1A, we have that. And notice that it says give your answer correct to 3 significant figures. So we'll come back to that again at the end. That's important. Show your workings out. You can be awarded marks if you make a mistake early on. If you've used the correct method afterwards, you can on occasions be given marks for using the correct method. Now, the first thing is, I would suggest on your calculator, because you're allowed to use a calculator, don't assume, don't try and be clever. You work out 12.4 minus 9.8 on your calculator. All right? Don't try and work it out in your head. The next bit is you expand 2.6 cubed. Now, if you notice, I've written it as 17.576, and sometimes where students go wrong in exams is they round off the work far too soon. Now, again, because 2.6 cubed, that 17.576 is the full answer. Now, if I was expanding something like 2.65 cubed, then I would need 6 numbers after the decimal point. So because there's only 3, it doesn't hurt to write all 3 down. So we're now working out 145.3 divided by 15.576. And when we do that, we get 8.267. Now, as you can see, that number there is written to 4 significant figures. And when we look at the question, it says 3 significant figures. Now, the reason for that is we need to give our answer to a greater degree of accuracy, so that if we make a mistake now, we can be credited with a mark for what we've done so far. Whereas if we just put in a final incorrect answer, then we will get 0. So we want 8.2 something. So we look at the number after the 6, it's a 7. Because it's more than 5, the 6 increases, and we end up with a final answer of 8.27. Now, with part B, calculate the reciprocal of 47, give your answer correct to 4 decimal places. That is what reciprocal means. It means 1 over 47, or 1 divided by 47. If we work it out, we've written there 0.02128, 5 decimal places. If you notice, I always go, my initial answer is always 1 more than what the examiner has asked me for. They've asked me for 4, I'm going to do 5, and now I'm going to change it 0.0213. So I go to the 4 decimal places. The 0 between the point and the 2 counts as a decimal place because it affects the number. So please make sure when you're doing these questions you are accurate. Don't try and work things out in your head. You're allowed to use your calculator. Please do so. Now, with the bonus material, there's two particular questions. There's the first one. What is the reciprocal of 145.3 to 5 decimal places? So if we actually write that down, we've got 1 divided by 145.3, and that actually gives me 0.006882. So I've given it there to 6 decimal places. So the 5 decimal places is 0.00688. And the examiner can see then where I've got my answer from. They can see that the 688 comes from the 6882. And because it's a 2, which is smaller than 5, the 8, the final 8, does not change. Now, you could also be asked this type of question. So you need to know how to enter that in your calculator. Do you write it as 3, press the fraction button? Well, you've got to start initially with a bracket, 3 fraction button, 3 over 8, close the bracket, and then do the power, which is a third. Now, there might be a cube root button on your calculator, but just for you to be aware, just in case. I would tend to write it not as 3 3/8, but I would tend to write it as 27 over 8 to the power of 1/3. And if you work that out, your calculator will either give you 3 over 2 or 1.5. If your calculator gives you the fraction 3 over 2, leave it as 3 over 2. If your calculator gives you 1.5, then leave it as 1.5. Do not mess about with an answer. So it's all about, this second one is all about using the buttons on your calculator efficiently. So it's worth checking some easy questions before you try the harder questions, because with the easy questions, you know what the answer should be. And when you work it out in your calculator, when you get that answer, you're thinking, yes, I've got it. So it's about being careful. Here we are.